Hello, my dearest students. In today's video, we're going to look at the line by line explanation of the short story, The Last Lesson. It is written by Alphonse Daudet. Make sure to watch this video until the end because we're going to learn a lot of vocabulary and we're going to discuss this story in such depth. It is definitely going to help you in your examination. So let's begin. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of a scolding, especially because M. Hamill had said that he would question us on participles, and I did not know the first word about them. So, the protagonist in the story is a schoolboy named Franz, and he was late to school that morning, and he was also scared of being reprimanded means scolded, because the sir, which is M. Hamill, would question them on participles and he hadn't learned anything. For a moment I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. So first a thought crossed his mind to not attend school. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field, back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles. So he was saying that it was alluring or it was attracting him to actually miss school and go outdoors because it was such a beautiful day. But I had the strength to resist. So he said he had the strength to fight the urge to miss school and he hurried off to school. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the order of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? So he was dreading because all the bad news had been written on the bulletin board. So now there was something there. So he was dreading about what could now be the bad news. Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watched her, who was there with this apprentice. So, who's an apprentice? Apprentice is a person who works below someone to learn the skill at a lower wage. So, this apprentice was learning how to be a blacksmith under him. Reading the bulletin and called after me. So here the blacksmith watcher was with his apprentice and they were reading the bulletin and they told him, don't go so fast, bub. You will get to your school in plenty of time. So he said, you don't have to go fast. You will reach in plenty of time. I thought he was making fun of me. So he thought that the blacksmith was mocking him because he was late. Or he thought he was being teased by him. And reached M. Hamill's little garden all out of breath. So he was panting and out of breath as he was rushing his way to school. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle. So he said, when I used to go to school, normally there used to be a great hustle and bustle, a lot of noise, which could be heard out in the streets. The opening and the closing of the desks, the lessons repeated in unison, very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better. And the teacher's great ruler, that is the scale, rapping on the table. So all of these sounds could be heard on a normal day. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. So he thought usually when there is so much chaos and commotion that we could easily get into the classroom and sit. But today it was really silent. Of course, that day everything had to be quiet as Sunday morning. But that day everything was unusually quiet. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places. and M. Hamill walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. The class had already started. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. So he was petrified to be shouted at because he was late to class. But nothing happened. M. Hamill saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." He was in shock because he expected the teacher to shout at him, but he very kindly told him to go to his place. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and a little black silk cap all embroidered. So he hadn't noticed what the teacher was wearing because he was in a fright and he was scared to be reprimanded. But as soon as he settled down, he saw that the teacher was wearing a beautiful green coat, a frilled shirt, and a little black silk cap which was embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and trial days. So he usually wore this on important days, and he was wearing that today. Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and so solemn. So he thought everything's so strange today because there was pin drop silence and everything seemed so solemn. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty. So what surprised Franz the most? To see that the back benches that were normally empty was filled with the village people sitting quietly, just like the students in the class. Old Hauser, with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postman, and several other people. Everybody looked sad. So everybody looked sad and forlorn. And Hauser had brought an old primer. So what is a primer? A primer is a small book, okay, a very small book that contains basic facts. Usually when we start to learn a particular subject, we have this very basic notebook which contains all the important points. So that is called a primer. So Hauser had brought an old primer, thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. So Franz was surprised to see that all the elders were also sitting in class with the students. While I was wondering about it all, Mr. Hamill mounted his chair and in the same grave is deep and gentle tone which he had used to me said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. So this is my last lecture to you. This is my last class because the order has come from which place? Berlin. To teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master will come tomorrow. This is your last French lesson and I want you to be very attentive and I want you to pay attention." What a thunderclap these words were to me. So the expression thunderclap is used when something sudden or an unexpected event happens. Like you are so startled because it is so unexpected. So to pay their honor and respect, the elders had come here and he was feeling all grief and nostalgia. The third. Oh, the wretches! That was what they had put up on the town hall. So wretches is like an exclamation we say when something unfortunate happens. So he realized that this was the news that was put on the bulletin board. My last French lesson. Why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons. So now Franz is feeling remorse. Remorse is repentance that he did not learn until now and he did not know the language really well. He went to seek birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints now were old friends that I couldn't give up. So now he's feeling bad that I should have learned before, but now it is too late. And M. Hamill too. The idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. So now he came to know that Mr. Hamill is leaving. He forgot how strict he was and how much he had shouted at them. Poor man, it was in honor of the last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. And now I understand why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. It was because they were sorry too. So even the other people in the village, they were also sorry that they had not gone to school more. So they are also now regretting it. It was their way of thanking our master. So they were feeling sorry. It was one way of thanking the master for his 40 years of faithful service and for showing their respect for the country that was not theirs. So even the people were feeling ashamed and miserable. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. It was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake? So he was saying I would have done anything to actually recite that participle clearly without a mistake. But I got mixed up on the first word and stood there holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. I heard M. Hamill say to me, so when he was asked to recite, we knew already that Franz had not learned, but he was feeling ashamed. And it felt it would have been better if he could have recited. I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. So I'm not going to scold you because you should feel miserable yourself for not being able to recite it. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, Ma, I have plenty of time. I will learn it tomorrow. So he's saying, we tend to procrastinate. What is procrastinate? Oh, we will do it tomorrow. We have a lot of time. Oh, why study today? There's still a long way for the examination. So we keep procrastinating, saying we have lots of time. And now you see where we have come out. That's the great trouble with Alice. She puts off learning till tomorrow. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? They think it's a pity that tomorrow the Germans are going to say that the French people don't even know your own language, how to read or speak. But you are not the worst, poor little Frank. So he's saying that we're not the worst. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. So he's saying we have a lot to blame ourselves with. So you're not the worst. You don't feel so bad. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. So he's saying it's not only your mistake, but your parents also did not feel that it was imperative to learn, or it was important to learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mill so as to have a little more money. So in order to make more money, they wanted you to sacrifice your education and they put you on work in farms or in mills. And I have been to blame also. So he's saying, even I am at fault. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? So he's saying that even I am to be blamed because I also have sent you on errands to water the plants and also gave you a holiday when I wanted to go fishing. Then, from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. So he's saying that it's one of the most beautiful languages, the most clearest, and the most logical. So make sure that you guard it and never forget this language. Because when a people are enslaved, when people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they have the key to their prison. So he's saying that in order to escape the clutches of slavery, your language is the key that will help you escape. Then he opened a grammar and read to us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy, so easy. I think too that I have never listened so carefully. So he's saying I have never listened so carefully in any class, or I haven't been so attentive. And that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. The children were also listening to the class very attentively, and also the teacher was teaching everything patiently, so the class seemed very easy. After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamill had new copies for us, written in a beautiful round hand. France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rods at the top of our desk. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. So everyone was diligently doing their work. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. So if you see in the beginning, he says there is a cacophony of lot of noises and screaming. But today, there is a solemn silence with only scratching of pens over the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them. So nobody paid heed to any beetles also, which normally they would scream and shout. Not even the littlest ones who easily get distracted, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks as if that was French too. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself. So he started thinking to himself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? So he was thinking that everything is changing within a day. So will the pigeons also have to sing in German? Is what he thought. Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamill sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. So he was staring and studying everything so that he could retain everything in his mind, and he had been working here for 40 years and now he was leaving. For 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. Only the desk and the benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hop vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. How it must have broken his heart to leave it all. He's trying to empathize with how the teacher would have felt to leave all of this behind. A life where he dedicated 40 years. Poor man, to hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country the next day. Here it shows how much memories does the teacher M. Hamill have attached to the place. And he is devastated or in anguish. But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and then the babies chanted their ba, bi, bi, bo, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying, so he was also overwhelmed. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry, and how well I remember it, the last lesson. So everybody is overwhelmed that it is their last French lesson. All at once the church clock struck 12, then the Angelus, and the same moment the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. M. Hamill stood up, very pale in his chair. I never saw him look so tall. So it is time to now depart. My friends, he said, I. But something choked him. He could not go longer. So he was tongue-tied, or he couldn't articulate his words. Then he turned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could, Vive la France, which means long live France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed, you may go. So he was so full of emotion that he was speechless, he couldn't speak. So he gestured them with his hand saying, School is over, you may go. And that was the end of the class, the last French class. So this story gives us a lesson that we should not take our freedom for granted, because we never know when we might be deprived of those privileges, and never to procrastinate thinking that we have a lot of time, because we never know when it is going to be the last time. So it gives us on the importance of language and also on education. I hope you enjoyed listening to the explanation as much as I enjoyed explaining it to you. If you haven't subscribed, do it immediately, because I don't want you to miss any important video that is going to help you in your examination. So like the story taught us, do not procrastinate and study well. I am praying for you. God bless.